Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, right? He was a bad guy, really bad guy. But you know what he did well? He killed terrorists.
In a guarded cell on the outskirts of Baghdad, the hours were slipping away for a man once feared across the world. Not a petty criminal or gang leader, but Saddam Hussein, former president of Iraq, dictator, and the architect of decades of war and bloodshed. It was December 30th, 2006. His final appeal had been denied, his fate sealed. The man who once defied nations and crushed enemies with an iron fist was now facing a rope and a countdown he could not escape. The last 24 hours of his life had begun, and with them came shocking final words and a wish for execution in a way no one could have imagined. To witness it all, we step inside that cell, minute by minute, to see exactly how the dictator's final day unfolded. Saddam Hussein had risen from a poor village in Tikrit to the absolute ruler of Iraq, a man whose portrait once hung in every classroom, office, and public square. To many, he was the embodiment of Iraq itself. But to his enemies, and there were many, he was a tyrant whose reign left behind decades of scars. The bloody Iran-Iraq War, the invasion of Kuwait, the massacres of Kurds and Shiites, and the suffocating fear of a police state where dissent meant death. Captured in December 2003, dragged from a spider hole by U.S. soldiers, Saddam's fall was as dramatic as his rise. His trial for crimes against humanity was broadcast worldwide. His defiance on full display as he shouted at judges, denied legitimacy, and called himself Iraq's rightful president. But the court's verdict in 2006 was final. Guilty, sentenced to hang.
ظل واقف. استمع إلى قرار المحكمة واقفا.
اسمع القرارات.
إيه واقفا، كن واقف.
لا قاعد.
أوقف. وقفوا.
جالس.
قررت المحكمة الحكم على المدان صدام حسين المجيد بالإعدام شنقا حتى الموت لارتكاب قتل عمد كجريمة ضد الإنسانية وفق المادة 12 أولاً أليف بدلالة المادة 12 أولاً ثانياً.
Now, with every legal door slammed shut, the countdown to justice ticked toward dawn. Outside the prison walls, Baghdad trembled with anticipation. Supporters whispered prayers while victims' families awaited closure. Inside the heavily guarded compound, Saddam sat with only the Quran in his lap, and the clock beside him ticking louder with each passing hour. As December 29th bled into the early hours of December 30th, Saddam Hussein remained calm inside his cell at Camp Justice, the former military base turned prison on the northern edge of Baghdad. Guards described him as composed, even dignified, a man who understood exactly what awaited him. There were no desperate appeals, no cries for mercy. Instead, Saddam spent the night reading from the Quran, his voice low, steady, and unbroken. He had refused special favors, declining any extraordinary requests that might hint at weakness. To the very end, he wanted to project strength, the image of a man who still saw himself as Iraq's leader, not a condemned criminal. Witnesses later said he appeared reflective, pausing often between verses, sometimes closing his eyes as though bracing his spirit for what was to come. His jailers, U.S. and Iraqi alike, noted the absence of panic. Unlike many before him on death row, Saddam showed no fear of the gallows. If anything, he seemed determined to face his fate on his own terms. He offered no elaborate confessions, no final strategy to delay the inevitable. Instead, he clutched his Quran, telling those near him it would be the companion he carried to the very end. Reports say he requested that it be given to a family member after his death, a reminder that in his mind, his faith and legacy would outlive the executioner's rope. Outside, Baghdad was restless. Rumors of the imminent execution raced through the streets. Security forces doubled patrols, fearing uprisings from loyalists. Inside, however, silence ruled the narrow corridors of Camp Justice. Saddam remained in prayer until dawn's first light, when guards prepared to move him for the final time. December 30th, 2006. As dawn broke over Baghdad, the city was already tense. Heavily armed checkpoints ringed the capital. Iraqi officials feared car bombs, riots, or last-minute rescue attempts by loyalists. The government wanted no mistakes. Saddam Hussein's execution would take place under the tightest security Iraq had ever seen. At Camp Justice, Saddam rose early. Reports from guards say he looked rested, his expression calm. His Quran remained close at hand, and he quietly recited verses as preparations began. Unlike many who face execution, Saddam ate little that morning. No special meal had been requested, no indulgence in a final feast. He accepted only simple food, more symbolic than satisfying. By mid-morning, the handover began. U.S. military forces, who had kept him in custody since 2003, formally transferred Saddam Hussein to Iraqi officials. This was a crucial symbolic step. The world's most infamous prisoner was no longer under American control. His fate was now entirely in the hands of the very government he had once ruled with terror. Shackled, dressed in simple clothes, Saddam was escorted under heavy guard down the narrow halls of Camp Justice. Witnesses later said he carried himself with surprising composure, walking without hesitation, shoulders straight. Even in chains, he seemed intent on appearing as a leader, not a broken man. From there, he was led into a secure holding area just steps away from the gallows. The room was stark, a chair, a table, a telephone, but Saddam spent his final hours with neither panic nor pleading. Instead, he recited prayers, repeating lines of faith over and over. Outside the prison walls, the world waited. News agencies flashed updates across screens, and whispers spread across Baghdad's neighborhoods. The countdown was entering its final stretch. As the afternoon of December 30th stretched into evening, the pace quickened inside Camp Justice. Saddam Hussein's final hours had arrived, and every step followed a precise script. Unlike in Texas or other death rows, Saddam was not offered the luxury of a customized last meal. Iraqi officials, wary of spectacle, provided only modest, standard food. A simple dish of boiled chicken and rice. He ate sparingly, saying little. The tray was cleared without comment. To those watching, it was another sign that Saddam intended to leave no outward show of weakness. Though no telephone calls were allowed, Saddam sent brief verbal messages through guards and officials. He requested that his Quran be returned to his family, along with personal notes he had written. His words carried no pleas for mercy, only instructions. Calm, measured, resolute. It was also during these final hours that Saddam made a last request. He asked not to be hanged, but to be executed by firing squad. The death of a soldier, not a criminal. In his mind, it was the honorable way to die. But Iraqi law was clear. For crimes against humanity, the sentence was hanging. His wish was denied. By late afternoon, the official confirmation came. The green light had been given. Iraq's Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, had approved the execution order. There would be no delays, no more appeals. The rope was waiting. Outside the prison gates, a vigil had begun to form. Government officials, clerics, and carefully chosen witnesses were escorted inside. Journalists were summoned, ready to document history. The atmosphere was tense, divided. For some, this was justice long overdue. For others, it was the humiliation of a leader they still revered. Inside, Saddam sat quietly as the guards prepared the final procedures. Witnesses later said his composure never broke. He clutched his Quran tightly, murmuring prayers, his voice steady. Even as the corridors filled with footsteps and orders, Saddam seemed locked in his own world, calm in the eye of the storm. The moment had come. All that remained were his final words and the gallows. Just before dawn, Saddam Hussein was led from his holding cell to the execution chamber inside Camp Justice. The narrow room was crowded. Judges, clerics, government officials, journalists, and security officers, all gathered to witness history. Saddam walked steadily, refusing the black hood offered to him. Instead, he kept his head high, clutching his Quran. He was dressed in a simple dark coat over a white shirt. a final image that contrasted sharply with the military uniforms and robes around him. Guards tied his hands behind his back, then bound his legs. As he was positioned on the wooden platform, Saddam exchanged words with those present. When some witnesses began chanting the name of Muqtada al-Sadr, a rival Shiite cleric, Saddam responded sharply, his voice strong. "Do you consider this bravery?" Then, as the noose was placed around his neck, he began reciting his final prayer. "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." Those would be his last words. Before he could finish the phrase a second time, the trapdoor was pulled. The rope snapped tight, and Saddam Hussein, once the Iron Ruler of Iraq, was left hanging. Moments later, doctors confirmed his death. It was 6 a.m. on December 30th, 2006. Outside, news spread instantly. Some Iraqis celebrated, firing guns into the air, calling it justice at last. Others mourned, considering it a humiliation of their former president. The world reacted with mixed emotions: relief, anger, and unease. In his hometown of Tikrit, Saddam's body was returned and buried, draped in an Iraqi flag. The execution closed one chapter of Iraq's history, but it did not end the violence. For many, it was only the beginning of years of sectarian bloodshed that followed. What do you think? Did his execution bring justice, or did it open the door to more chaos in Iraq? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story informative, please like the video and subscribe for more true Final Hour stories from history.